everyone, welcome back to the Tech Podcast. And today, our special guest is Shai Phillips, who's the president of Quantum Technology Executive Search. Thank you for joining, Shai. How are you doing today?
It's my pleasure. It's great to be here, Ksenia. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about your background, about your career.
Yeah, absolutely. So Search is pronounced Search, but it's spelled Psirch, just so we can get the psi in there because that is a big icon for quantum technology. I won't explain that now, but that's how we came up with the name. Search is in fact the only dedicated division of an established executive search firm for quantum technology, which basically means that even though we're headhunters, we only do it at a senior management level, and we are dedicated to quantum technology. And in that respect, we are literally the only operation of its kind anywhere in the world. It actually came out of Burke and Clayton Executive Search, which is the parent company of the division. And Burke and Clayton has been around for about 30 years, so 3 decades, all of which that time has been spent, servicing Fortune 500 companies, private multinationals, and a whole host of other companies, universities, and non-profit organizations even. So we've been around for a very long time. And that, by the way, is another differentiator for us, is that there are a few others servicing the industry, quantum technology, but they tend to focus on all different levels, including entry-level and mid-level positions, which we don't do. And they've only been around for a few years, whereas we've been around for 3 decades, and that's another differentiating point that we like about our situation, is that we're very established in the executive search industry.
Sounds very exciting. How did you join the quantum computing industry?
Yeah, so that actually is a little bit on the unusual side. So we actually don't, before the quantum technology division search began, we didn't really have much of the firm at least didn't really have much of a background in technology in general. Now, for me, it was a little bit different. I actually came up. I grew up in the UK in London. I think that's where you're currently based. I went
Yes.
to university at Cambridge. And even then, even during that time, I wasn't a student of technology or math or computer science or anything like that. But I was extremely interested in quantum technology coming up, and I used to read everything I could get my hands on. I actually heard Stephen Hawking lecture live when he was still with us, and I just loved it. So it was a bit of a passion project for me. Back in 2019, when we went from a place where quantum computing was primarily theoretical to actually starting to see some incredible advancements in commercialization, something that I never actually thought would ever happen. I thought, great, quantum technology is really interesting, or, quantum mechanics, I should say, is really interesting. And it just blew my mind what that whole field was all about. But I never back then, in my early days, thought that there would be any kind of commercial application. So in 2019, when, Google announced quantum supremacy and there was a whole bunch of other things happening to begin commercializing the technology, I started talking about it a lot. And my boss, the CEO of our company, Betsy Burkham-McCredere, she started telling me, well, why don't you do something about it? And I was like, well, what am I going to do about it? But then eventually I realized she had a point. And so that's how the division Search was born. And now we've been servicing the quantum technology industry for a while, and it's been a lot of fun.
Could you please offer some insights about the current quantum computing market landscape and maybe some challenges the market's facing?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would actually like to focus on one particular challenge that the market is facing, because I think it's probably the biggest one we're confronting right now. So the biggest challenge in the quantum technology space, especially when it comes to quantum computing, is the level of skepticism and cynicism that pervades, even, unfortunately, amongst a handful of people within the industry, which is honestly the first time I've ever seen anything of its kind. You've got people working in an industry which I'm very passionate about, and so many people are very passionate about. And as participants in that industry, they exploit every opportunity they possibly can to badmouth the industry. And it blows my mind. In fact, I've spoken to other people in the industry who also can't believe that it's a phenomenon. Now, everyone's, of course, entitled to their opinions and all the rest of it. But I actually have spoken with a lot of experts, and obviously, as my position as a quantum headhunter, I'm afforded a lot of access And there are plenty of quantum experts who actually completely disagree with the over-cynicism in the industry. And so for that reason, I've actually started to write a monthly column in the widest
Mhm.
read publication in the industry. It's called the Quantum Insider. And my monthly column is called The Unexaggerated Magic of Quantum. And in that monthly column, what I try and do is, basically penetrate this idea of, the most overused word in the industry is hype. As if everything is exaggerated. It's not true. Things aren't exaggerated. There is a lot of promise to quantum technology. There is a lot of promise to quantum computing. And I explain why in this series, The Unexaggerated Magic of Quantum, especially when it comes to quantum computing. And I undo this myth that it's all just hype. It's not. There are plenty of reasons why quantum computing is likely to change the world, and there's expert support for that, including in aiding significantly with artificial intelligence and providing something that computer scientists see as the holy grail of trying to accomplish something. They actually provide exponential speedups in computational capability, exponential being as far as you can get with speedups in computing for artificial intelligence. Now, that's not a settled matter. There's still dissent within the industry, but there is plenty of compelling evidence that that's the case. So that's what I see as the biggest challenge. I do see us overcoming it. But I think we need a lot more optimism and vocal optimism from experts in the market. I shouldn't be the one to have to do it. I'm not a computer scientist. I'm not a quantum engineer. But for some reason, it's fallen to me. I guess the scientists have a lot more to worry about than, voicing opinions to the market. They've actually got real, honest work to do on actually developing the technology. So I guess I've taken up the mantle of that, proponent.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I have a passion for quantum computing as well. So I did my research. And if you're talking about the landscape of the companies, we don't have a lot, right? So do we really have a demand for quantum computing, especially executive leadership positions? So tell me.
Right, that's a very, very good question. So let's take it from the top. To start with quantum computing companies, as in, pure quantum computing companies, not companies like IBM that have a big project in quantum computing, or Honeywell, which also has its own kind of like, I guess at this point, a subsidiary because it was spun off with another company called Cambridge Quantum Computing, and the Honeywell division kind of joined with that, and now it's a subsidiary. So yeah, Google and IBM and Amazon, and you've got all these big companies working on initiatives in quantum computing. Now, if you put those to one side, and you look at just pure quantum companies, there are a lot. In fact, every single day I seem to find another one. And I've been doing this for years now. And still, I come across new companies every day. They're getting a lot of funding. The federal government can't afford to stop funding quantum technology and quantum computing, especially, and these companies. And the reason for that is, and there are a lot of initiatives around that, especially with Department of Energy, Department of Defense. The reason is, regardless of what your opinion is about how likely it is or how long it'll take, the eventuality of someone coming in before us, before the United States, like China, for example, that is a catastrophic doomsday scenario. So there is no option to stop funding it. Otherwise, it could potentially be, it could, really change things for the worse for the United States. So the funding is likely to continue, but there is a vast number of quantum computing companies in the market today. I think actually the Quantum Insider has an intelligence platform that can give you the actual number. The last time I checked, which was about a year ago, it was over 600, but it might be much more than that by now. So there is a quite prolific landscape. And then there's other things to consider. Every university and their grandmother these days has a quantum center. We actually just filled the top position at one. Virginia Tech brought somebody in from Amazon, and we were working with Northrop Grumman on that as well, because it's a joint quantum center. It's hybrid, both with the aerospace and defense industry as well as with academia. So you've got to consider the universities, then you've got to consider the national labs like Oak Ridge and all the rest of them. And then you've also got kind of, joint ventures, non-profits. In Germany, you've got things like Fraunhofer. You've got the Max Planck Institute, which is doing a lot. So yes, it is a very big marketplace, more than people would actually think to begin with. However, you're absolutely right. Is anyone hiring a chief quantum officer right now? Probably not that many people. In fact, I can count on one hand how many chief quantum officer positions actually exist. So we are early. We are very early to the market, but we're not too early, because there are some positions that, that are at the senior management level, which we can help with. And on the other hand, we also have our traditional executive search practice, which is keeping, our pipeline full in the background. So we're early to the game, absolutely. And also, another point of insight is companies tend to build their quantum teams from the ground up, not top down. So they're not hiring, a VP of quantum and then building the team under them. Absolutely not. They're dipping their toes in the water a little bit more than that. And what they're doing is hiring entry level or junior quantum engineers, and then building it up from there. And some of them haven't even really reached the level of a senior quantum, executive. Instead, the quantum people are laddering up to regular tech, which for various reasons I believe is probably not the best thing. I won't go into that now because I've been talking for a lot already. But there are some companies which are bucking the trend. One good example of that is Thales, a French aerospace and defense company. They are heavily invested in quantum. They are not dipping their toes in the water. They are absolutely all in. And that's fantastic to see. And we'd love to see more of that.
You mentioned German and you mentioned France. Where is the greatest demand geographically?
Well, the United States has got a lot going on. So I would say the United States is one of the most mature marketplaces. But absolutely, Germany and France, they do have a lot going on as well. There are some very famous quantum computing companies coming out of France. Pascal is one of them, spelt with a Q. Great company, everyone seems to know it. Also in the Netherlands, there's some great companies as well. In Scandinavia, IQM, there's a lot going on. That's one company also. Britain has got a huge amount going on in quantum. I'm trying to think of some examples. I mean, Cambridge Quantum that I already just mentioned, the Honeywell, that was a British company. Also, another company which is kind of multinational. So you get these, it's a very integrated industry. So, for example, you've got a company called Psi Quantum, probably the best funded quantum computing company in the world right now. We just got another almost $1 billion Australian dollars of funding, even after it was already at about 900 million or thereabouts. So it's probably the best funded quantum computing company in the world, and it has people in it. It was kind of joint. It has people in it from the UK, University of Bristol, Imperial College London. The CEO is from Australia, Jeremy O'Brien. And it has a massive presence in Palo Alto, or in Silicon Valley. So is it American? Is it Australian? Is it British? I don't know. But it's kind of also adds to the very global landscape of quantum. Quantum is global. You can't do quantum on a domestic basis. If you're going to do quantum, even as an executive search firm, you have to be global, both in terms of the search you conduct, the searches you conduct, as well as the companies that are out there.
Yeah, sounds good. Are companies currently looking for candidates with a certain background, certain skill sets, or they open to consider individuals with like a great potential for this role?
Well, you need both, unfortunately. This is an extremely demanding and fiercely competitive industry. So yes, if I were, it depends what the position is, of course. If a company is looking for a good chief executive officer, there is a lot of leeway as to where you can go for that, because you're just really looking for a fantastic people manager, an excellent, business administrator, and you don't necessarily need a CEO, that understands the ins and outs of, how to build a qubit. Obviously they need some background information, but you don't really need that. That applies to a lot of positions on the, kind of more administrative side. However, for technical positions, yes, then it gets pretty ingrained. And so what you need really, if you want to be, a technical participant in the industry, most of the time a PhD. So if you're trying to I mean, maybe on the software side, there's a little bit more leeway for that. But most of the time, a PhD comes into play. You also come across, because of ITAR restrictions and a lot of the protectionism surrounding technology, from countries on a global, so definitely with the US, you then face issues of citizenship. So a lot of these positions do require TSSCI security clearance, which is the highest level of top secret clearance you can get. And so at that point, you're talking about US citizenship. There are certain situations in which you can hire from, friendly nations that have treaties in place, formal treaties with the United States. But it's then going to be a long road, because even with that, even if you're hired, the plan would then be, okay, but now you need to get US citizenship before you can really do anything of value, before we can even let you in the lab, that kind of thing. So PhD is one. a lot of citizenship issues come into play for national security reasons. And then, of course, we do get heavily into, capabilities and experience and expertise. And that will obviously depend heavily on the position and the client and what they're looking for.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about the skill set for executive leadership roles.
Quite a few options there. So you've got, so again, if we go into things like marketing or, chief marketing officer, chief communications officer, chief executive officer, chief financial officer, you can have a lot of leeway with where you go. Depending on the client's preferences, you can go outside of the industry, to an adjoining or adjacent industry, like just tech in general or computing. I think one good example of that is, I hope I'm not getting this name wrong. I know his last name is Hayes, but I believe his name is Robert Hayes. And he's the chief executive officer of Atom Computing. I hope I'm remembering this right. He came from HP, I believe. If any of these facts are wrong, I'm going to be very embarrassed, but that's what I'm kind of bringing to mind right now. That is a great example. Great CEO, great company. Sorry, I am getting that wrong. No, I'm not. I'm getting that right. Great CEO, great company, and we didn't need somebody from the quantum industry. Now, on the other hand, if you're going for a chief technology officer, there are situations in which CTOs have been brought in that weren't from a quantum background. I personally would disagree with that. And one of the reasons that I would disagree with that is that while most of the tech world thinks and acts digitally, quantum, on its most basic level, is not a digital technology. I mean, yes, it's been coarse-grained into digital computation, even though there are analog quantum computers out there as well. A good example is Quera. They have both analog and digital versions of their quantum computing technology. But most people in the digital tech world think in binary terms. They think, digitally. Quantum, on its underlying, kind of facet, is a analog technology. And so to really understand that, I think when it comes to the technology and the technical side, I would advise any client to not go outside of quantum expertise. At least find somebody with some experience in quantum technology, rather than bringing somebody in that was just a technology expert.
What methods do you employ in order to search executives?
Oh, every method. So if you're talking
Tell us
about
more
actually,
about it.
yeah, if you're talking about actually finding them and contacting them, I guess how would you put automaton side of the role, where you're really just trying to reach out to as many people as possible, demand generation, get them interested, get them involved. We do everything we can for that. So we use social media prolifically. We are on the phone pretty much 24 hours, a day. Well, I won't go that far. We're on the phone every single day for a lot of the time. Emails. We contact people we already know in the industry, because we have a vast network of people in the quantum industry at this point. And so we get in touch with every of them to see, with all of them, to see if they can make referrals or recommendations, so we can really get the inside scoop. We do everything we can, and once, of course, we felt we've done a thorough job of that, then of course we get to a much more kind of creative and intellectually demanding part of the process, which is to then actually assess the people who are interested and involved, and make comparative benchmarking calls as to how to proceed with the field, and which to kind of proceed with.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about women's leadership. We have a very, very sad statistic now. And do you see any progress, any positive change in this term?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I should say that my boss, Betsy Burkham-McCredere, she's the CEO of Burkham Clayton. She is absolutely prolific in the women's movement. So that's been part of our identity for ever since the beginning of Psirch as a quantum technology division. And so she, for example, there was a big move in California to ensure that there would be women on corporate boards. She was instrumental in drafting that legislation. She's written books about women being on corporate boards of directors. She speaks at Fortune 500s all the time, and she's also she was, I think she still is, but it's the leadership is being passed over soon. The national CEO of 50/50 women on boards, and there was actually just one of their major events in Los Angeles. So yes, that's a big part of who we are. Also, within the quantum industry, there is a big movement called Women in Quantum, which is, again, very visible within the industry. It does promote, women executives in quantum as an industry. And from what I've seen, there is generally good participation. We'd always like for there to be more, but we do see very positive trends in that respect as well. So yes, I think it's doing well. I think there's room for improvement, but it's certainly been on our minds with every search we've conducted.
Okay, thank you very much, Shai, for your time for this insightful conversation. So I really appreciate it. And yeah, thank you for coming. Wish you a great rest of the day and a great weekend.
My pleasure. Thanks, Ksenia.